Saul, the Roman emperor, who declared war on the ocean and claimed victory. In the year 40 AD, the most powerful army on earth marched to the shores of the English Channel, raised their weapons toward the crashing waves, and on the command of their emperor, declared war on the sea itself. Thousands of Rome's finest soldiers stood at the water's edge, launched their javelins into the surf, swung their swords at the foam, and then, on their knees in the wet sand, collected seashells into their helmets as spoils of war. Their emperor watched from behind them, grinning, and declared an absolute and total victory over Neptune, god of the ocean. This is not a myth. This is not a legend invented by poets. This happened. And the man who ordered it controlled the largest empire the Western world had ever seen. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. But history remembers him by a far stranger name: Caligula. For centuries, this was hidden from the world, buried beneath layers of imperial propaganda, lost manuscripts, and deliberate historical erasure. The Roman Empire did not want you to know the full truth about what happened on that beach, because what happened there was not simply the act of a madman. It was something far more complex, far more sinister, and far more revealing about the nature of absolute power than any history textbook has ever admitted. To understand what truly unfolded, you need to understand who Caligula was before the madness, before the ocean, before everything fell apart. He was born into Roman royalty, the great-grandson of Emperor Augustus himself. His father, Germanicus, was the most beloved general in the entire empire, a war hero adored by soldiers and citizens alike. As a small child, Caligula lived in military camps along the Germanic frontier, and the soldiers loved him. They dressed him in a tiny soldier's uniform, complete with miniature boots called caligi. That is where his nickname came from, Caligula. It means little boot. The soldiers thought it was adorable. They had no idea what that little boy would become. When Caligula took the throne in 37 AD, Rome celebrated. The people wept with joy. They believed the Golden Age had returned. For the first 6 months of his reign, Caligula was generous, kind, and just. He freed political prisoners. He reduced taxes. He hosted spectacular games. Rome had not been this hopeful in decades. And then, something changed. Ancient sources tell us Caligula fell gravely ill, possibly from poisoning, possibly from epilepsy, possibly from something no ancient physician could diagnose. When he recovered, he was no longer the same man. The emperor who emerged from that sickness was paranoid, volatile, and consumed by a darkness that would define the rest of his short and terrifying reign. He executed senators on a whim. He spoke to the moon as though it were his lover. He allegedly made his favorite horse, Incitatus, a priest, and attempted to appoint it as a consul of Rome. He declared himself a living god and demanded temples be built in his honor across the empire. And then came the order that has baffled historians for nearly 2,000 years. The order to march the legions north and wage war against the sea. What historians don't tell you is that the campaign to the English Channel was not originally about the ocean at all. Caligula had assembled a massive invasion force with one clear objective: to cross the Channel and conquer Britain, the mysterious island at the edge of the known world, the one territory that even Julius Caesar had failed to permanently subdue. This was supposed to be Caligula's defining military achievement. This was supposed to cement his legacy alongside the greatest conquerors in Roman history. The legions marched north through Gaul. The warships were built. The supplies were gathered. Everything was in place for what should have been one of the most ambitious military operations of the ancient world. And then, on that beach, something went catastrophically wrong. The truth was buried for a reason, but the clues survive in fragments scattered across the writings of Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Seneca, ancient historians who each recorded the event with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Some scholars now believe the legions simply refused to go. The English Channel was terrifying to Roman soldiers. Many of them had never seen the open ocean. The tides were unpredictable, the waters were cold and violent, and the stories of what waited on the other side, painted warriors, savage druids, fog-covered forests filled with horrors, were enough to shake even the bravest among them. A full-scale mutiny may have been moments away. And here is where the mystery deepens. Some modern historians have proposed a theory that changes everything we thought we knew about this event. What if Caligula's order to attack the ocean was not madness at all? What if it was punishment? In the Roman military, humiliation was a weapon. When soldiers showed cowardice, their commanders would sometimes force them to perform degrading acts as a form of discipline. Making battle-hardened legionaries stab at waves and collect seashells like children on a holiday. That is not the act of an insane emperor who doesn't know what water is. That is the act of a furious general telling his men that if they are too afraid to fight a real enemy, they can fight the sea instead. The seashells were not trophies. They were marks of shame. Others believe the account itself has been distorted. The Latin word for seashells, musculi, is almost identical to the Latin word for military engineering huts used in siege warfare. Is it possible that the soldiers were ordered to collect not seashells but siege equipment, and that later historians, eager to paint Caligula as a lunatic, twisted the story into something absurd? We may never know for certain. The ancient sources that survive were almost all written by men who despised Caligula, men from the senatorial class that he terrorized, men who had every reason to make him look as unhinged as possible. This is the dark machinery that hides behind so much of ancient history. The victors write the record. The dead cannot defend themselves. And when an emperor is assassinated by his own guards, as Caligula was in January of 41 AD, stabbed 30 times in a narrow corridor beneath the imperial palace, the people who killed him get to decide how the world remembers him. They called him a monster. They called him insane. They ordered the destruction of his statues and the erasure of his name. And for 2,000 years, the world accepted their version without question. But what if the madness of Caligula was, at least in part, a story crafted by his murderers to justify the blood on their hands? What if some of the most famous tales of his insanity were exaggerated, embellished, or entirely invented? This does not make Caligula a hero. He was, by nearly every account, a cruel and dangerous ruler. But cruelty and insanity are not the same thing, and the difference matters. Because if we accept every story told about a dead man by the people who killed him, we are not studying history. We are reading propaganda. The war on the ocean reminds us of something uncomfortable that echoes through every century, including our own. Power does not simply corrupt. Power reveals. It strips away every mask, every pretense, every carefully maintained illusion of normalcy. Give a man the authority of a god. Remove every check on his behavior, surround him with people too terrified to say no, and you will discover exactly who he always was. Rome learned this lesson on a windswept beach in northern Gaul, watching its finest soldiers swing swords at the tide. The question is whether we have learned it since. The seashells Caligula's soldiers collected that day were reportedly carried back to Rome and displayed as war trophies in a grand triumph. The ocean, of course, did not care. It kept crashing against the shore long after the legions marched away, long after Caligula bled out on the palace floor, long after Rome itself crumbled into dust. The sea always wins in the end. But Caligula is not the only Roman emperor whose secrets have been buried by time. There was another, one who ruled centuries later, whose actions were so bizarre, so scandalous, and so deliberately erased from the official record that most people have never even heard his name. And what he did makes Caligula's war on the ocean look almost sane by comparison. That story is coming next. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on because you do not want to miss what we are about to uncover. History is full of secrets. We are just getting started.